He laughed at me across my own dinner table, saying I was sweet but outdated, as if a mother's worth expired with her youth. I felt the sting. Yes, but I'd learned long ago that silence can be sharper than pride. That night, instead of tears, I opened a folder, the one holding the deed, the account numbers, and the proof of every name that still depended on mine. What he thought was a small insult would soon open a door he couldn't close. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, letting me know where you're watching from. It was a Saturday that still smelled of rain, the kind that lingers in the cedar outside my kitchen window. I'd started dinner early, roast chicken, green beans with almonds, cornbread in the small cast-iron skillet Eddie once said made everything taste like patience. 6 years since his passing, and the house still held the rhythm of 2 people. I set the embroidered cloth he gave me on our 10th anniversary in the middle of the table. The stitches had faded to a warm ivory, soft as the memory of his laugh. Kyron was bringing his fiancé tonight. I'd seen Shanda twice before, always at a distance. She was bright, modern, the sort of woman who filled silence with goals. I wanted to make a good impression, but something in me hummed with worry, the kind that isn't about what might happen, but what might already be happening without you knowing. By the time the clock blinked 6, the chicken rested on its platter, steam curling like breath on a cold morning. I wiped my hands on the towel, checked the mirror by the entryway, and whispered, "Let it go smooth." "Eddie?" The knock came, followed by a cheerful voice, Shanda's, before the door even opened. "Hi, Maura." "Oh, wow. This place is charming." Kyron stood behind her, jacket half buttoned, that familiar nervous smile he wore when he needed me to approve of something before he'd even asked. Shanda walked in first. Her heels clicked on the hardwood, eyes scanning every corner as though the room might grate her back. Then she spotted the framed photo near the door, Eddie in his firefighter uniform, young and sunburned from that summer of endless shifts. She laughed softly, not cruelly, but enough. "Oh, that's adorable. Vintage." Kyron's silence stretched like wire. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. "That was taken the day he saved 3 families from a warehouse fire," I said. He was proud of the soot. "Oh," Shanda blinked. "Well, it's very nostalgic." She turned toward the kitchen before my words could land anywhere. We sat to eat. Shanda complimented the food, said the chicken was comforting, like something from a food blog about widows reinventing themselves. Kyron nodded, fork tapping nervously. I tried to keep conversation steady, asked about their new apartment downtown, the engagement party plans, their work. Shanda had opinions about minimalism and light spaces. When she set her glass down, I noticed it immediately, a wet ring on the embroidered cloth, a perfect circle glistening around the edge of her drink. She didn't see it. She was talking about how too many old things make a home feel heavy. Kyron reached for the napkin, wiping a few crumbs, careful not to disturb her glass. "We've been thinking about repainting this place after you decide what you want to do. Mom, this place," I repeated quietly. Shanda smiled, oblivious. "It has great bones. Once we repaint, it'll feel brighter." I felt the air fold in on itself. The stain on the cloth spread slowly outward, a bloom of water and time. I remembered Eddie's hands the night he gave it to me, his grin, the smell of smoke on his uniform. "You keep the warmth," he had said, "and I'll keep the watch." When someone says brighter, they often mean without you. Dinner ended without incident, the kind where silence does all the talking. They left with hugs that felt more like exits from an interview. I stood by the window, watching their car reverse down the drive, taillights flickering like short goodbyes. The house returned to its small sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint click of the wall clock, my heartbeat keeping time. I washed each plate carefully, lined them to dry, and then picked up the embroidered cloth. The ring was lighter now, but still visible, a memory refusing to fade. I placed it under the warm lamp, smoothing the wrinkles with my palm. Eddie's photo caught the light from across the room. "You'd laugh differently." "Eddie," I whispered. "You always did." As I folded the damp cloth, One droplet slipped from the edge, landing on my wrist like punctuation. Some stains don't spread, they sink. The morning sunlight came through the lace curtains in broken squares, dust motes drifting like small secrets. I had just poured the first cup of coffee when I saw Kyron's car pull up again. Too soon, too early for anything casual. Shanda came in first, binder in hand, her nails clicking softly against the plastic cover. Kyron followed with that quiet sigh of a man already halfway between loyalty and exhaustion. "We thought it'd be good to go over a few wedding details with you," Shanda said. Setting the binder on the table, a label read Wedding Equity Breakdown. Inside, neat columns divided their future into numbers: venue, florist, cake, and then a smaller line near the bottom: House Advice Mom. Parentheses. I stared at my name tucked neatly inside them. How quickly gratitude can be organized, caged, and itemized. The coffee machine sputtered, filling the silence with a hum that sounded too much like patience. I smiled, pretending to read, and said, "I didn't realize you were planning a budget presentation." "It's not formal," Kyron replied, though his tone already carried apology. "We just thought it might help us stay clear about responsibilities." Responsibilities. It was the word my husband once used when the mortgage was late, not when love was being measured. Shanda sipped her coffee and leaned in. "And since your house will eventually be part of the family asset, it's good to have a plan." I nodded, though my pulse tapped at my throat. Of course, always good to have a plan. Later, after they'd finished their polite explanations, I folded the sheet carefully, like something that might stain if left out too long, and slipped it into my recipe folder, between banana bread and chicken casserole, the safest place for things that shouldn't be forgotten. By noon, they were back in the living room, voices calm but businesslike. "I've been reading about color palettes that increase resale value," Shanda said, flipping through her phone. "If we repaint in lighter tones, this place could go up by 10%. It's not about now, it's just smart long-term planning." Kyron nodded. "It's not about now." Mom, just long-term." "Who's long-term?" I asked quietly. The question hung in the air like steam. Shanda blinked, then laughed lightly. "Ours. All of us." "Right." I folded my hands and smiled again, though my chest felt small and tight. "I see." The coffee had gone cold. The smell of it mingled with paint suggestions and silence. I took the equity sheet from the table and tucked it fully into the recipe folder, closing it with a decisive thud. Paper trails begin quietly, in moments no one else finds important. That afternoon, I tended to the rose bush by the side fence. The air smelled of damp soil and lilac, faintly metallic. Odessa Bloom, my neighbor of 20 years, was walking her terrier along the sidewalk. I heard her voice before I saw her. "That property's finally going to get a younger touch," she said to a friend. "Heard the son's fiancé is full of ideas." My pruning shears paused midair. I adjusted my hat, pretending not to hear, and clipped the next branch cleanly. A thorn pierced my glove, just enough to draw a bead of blood. It glimmered dark red against the leather. I watched it for a long moment before wiping it on my apron. People always think youth means improvement. They never ask what it replaces. That evening, after the house fell quiet again, I sat at my desk. The binder still rested in the corner, faintly pink from Shanda's perfume. I took out the folded equity sheet, placed it into an envelope, and labeled it neatly, "Wedding Home." Next to it lay the embroidered cloth, now dry, the faint ring still visible under lamplight. Not a stain anymore, just a reminder. I sealed the envelope, pressing the edges smooth, somewhere between coffee rings and ink signatures. The truth had started keeping its own records. The afternoon sun was low enough to turn the blinds into golden bars when I noticed something sticking out of my mailbox. A brown envelope. Thick. Official looking. I didn't remember expecting anything. Bills came online now. Even junk mail had gone digital. The return address read, Sutton Real Estate Appraisal. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe the house next door, Odessa's. She'd been talking about refinancing for months. But the name on the label was mine, Maura Ellison. Curiosity turned to unease. I slid it open carefully with the edge of a butter knife. Inside was a single sheet, crisp and impersonal, stamped with a red seal. It listed my address in full. Then beneath, property to be assessed for market readiness. 2 signatures sat at the bottom. Kieran Ellison, Shanda Voss. I stared at their names, at the way the ink curved into ownership that wasn't theirs. My coffee cup from earlier still sat by the sink. The ring on its base matched the stain on the embroidered cloth from that dinner. Full circle, I thought. Market readiness. What an elegant way to erase a life. I dialed Kyron's number. My hands didn't shake much, just enough to feel alive. "Hey, Mom," he answered, voice too careful. The tone people use when they've already rehearsed an apology. "I got some mail today," I said, "from Sutton Real Estate." A pause, then a sigh. "Oh, it's just an estimate. Nothing serious. Shanda thought it'd be good to know the house's current value." "In case what?" I asked. "In case you ever decide to move closer to us," he said quickly. The words stacked together like a wall. Behind him, I heard Shanda's voice, cheerful, echoing through his phone. "It's just practical." "Practical," I repeated. That's usually where respect ends. He said nothing for a while. I could hear his breathing. My own heart counted out the seconds, steady, mechanical, like the monitor I used to watch in the ambulance when the patient's pulse returned. "Finally," he said, "you're reading too much into it." "Mom." Before the call ended, the dial tone hummed in my ear, an empty sound pretending to mean something. I sat at my desk for a long while, looking at the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my cabinet, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Inside were folders labeled insurance, mortgage, utilities, the scaffolding of a lifetime. I pulled out the folder marked home ownership, Ellison, and spread the contents across the table. Deed copies, tax letters, insurance renewals, all proof of something that couldn't be itemized on any equity sheet. I took a fresh folder from the pack and wrote, in slow, careful letters, "Home ownership proof private." One by one, I slid each document into the new folder, sealing it with quiet precision. Then I tested the cabinet lock. It clicked open without resistance, worn down over time, like trust. So I ordered a new one, a digital padlock, and installed it that same afternoon. When I pressed the button, a faint beep confirmed it was secure. If they needed keys, I'd change the doors. I scanned each document, naming the files after my husband's initials. AG 1, Edgy, Aja 3. His name, Eddie James Ellison, was still the safest password I knew by the time I was done. The light outside had gone pale, almost metallic. The house felt quieter, but not smaller. Dusk came softly, like an apology. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window. The appraisal envelope lay on the table, its corner curling under the lamplight. I studied it the way one studies a photograph of a stranger who looks faintly familiar. They measured the walls, I murmured, but not the years that built them. Outside, a car door shut, then silence. Somewhere a sprinkler started, ticking like an old clock. I picked up the envelope, pressed it flat, and slid it into the folder marked private. Then I sealed the drawer with the new digital lock. If they wanted a valuation, I'd make sure they got one, signed and sealed by me. They arrived just before sunset, the kind of polite hour that still smells like daylight. Kyron's car eased into the driveway, and I caught sight of the boutique grocery bags before they even knocked. Olive oil, artisan bread, the sort of gifts that pretend to be thoughtful while buying time. Shanda stepped inside first, her perfume faintly citrus. "We just wanted to check on you," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "I brought a few catalogs with ideas. Your kitchen has such good bones." The embroidered cloth was nowhere in sight. I'd replaced it with a plain runner, a neutral table, a neutral tone. I smiled faintly and asked if they'd like tea, already knowing they wouldn't stay long enough to finish it. She laid the catalogs down with a satisfied little thud. Restoration living, heritage interiors, It struck me how easily the word heritage could be used to erase the people who built it. After dinner, Shanda flipped open the catalogs, their glossy pages whispering like secrets. Sticky notes bloomed along the edges. Master, lighter palette, living room, minimalist. And one that caught my breath. Nursery, soft white. Nursery, I asked. Oh, just, someday, Shanda said, breezy and bright. Someday, that word people use to squat on a present that isn't theirs. Kyron tried to keep the mood casual. We're just brainstorming. Mom, nothing serious. Of course, I said, smiling thinly. While she talked about wall finishes and accent lighting, I slid my phone onto silent mode and, without looking down, began taking photos click, 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 each timestamp quietly preserved. Maybe a lighter palette would make everything feel more open, she went on. I nodded. Open, I echoed. That's one word for it? Shanda moved easily around the kitchen, opening the third drawer without asking, retrieving my serving spoons from memory. I remember where you keep things, she said, laughing. Do you? I asked gently, taking the spoons from her hand. Knowing where the spoons live isn't the same as owning the kitchen. She blinked. Unsure whether I was joking, Kyron's glance darted between us, searching for a softer landing. I gave him one by changing the subject, but my tone stayed steady, deliberate. Some boundaries didn't need to be shouted, they just needed to be drawn once. Clearly, later, as they lingered on the porch, Kyron stepped outside to take a call. I heard the door creak behind him. Shanda wandered toward the den, her phone in hand. I began collecting the dishes, stacking them carefully. That's when the sound floated in, thin and unmistakable from the porch. Kyron's phone was still on speaker. Did you bring up repainting again? Shanda's voice said, distant but clear. We need her ready to list by midsummer. Stop, Kyron whispered. She can hear. I froze, my hand gripping the edge of the counter. My breath came slow and steady. Each inhale counted. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, the tea kettle hissed softly in the background, a metronome for my restraint. When they came back inside, I poured tea for 3, equal measures. No sugar. Sugar, I asked, looking at Shanda. My voice was neutral, almost kind, but the air between us was sharp enough to taste. She shook her head. No, thank you. Suit yourself. We sat there for a while, the silence thick as syrup. People who rush a sale always pour faster than they sip. After they left, I returned to the table. The catalogs lay open, all those sticky notes like small, arrogant flags. I arranged them neatly, page by page, then photographed each one, capturing the timestamp in the corner. I emailed the photos to myself with the subject line, house proofs, catalog notes. In the body, I typed a single sentence. March 28th, 6:47 p.m. Kyron and Shanda present. Discussion regarding listing timeline. I attached the photos and hit send. Then I tore a sheet from my yellow notepad, wrote one line, and taped it inside my file cabinet door. If they need a timeline, I'll keep the clock. The room was still. The tea had cooled. Outside, the porch light hummed. When people rush a summer that hasn't arrived, it's time to see a lawyer who knows what winter looks like on paper. The morning traffic on SE Belmont moves slow, soft drizzle catching light on every windshield. I parked beneath the same oak tree where Eddie and I used to wait for the teller to unlock the doors of the old credit union. The sign had changed, the carpets too, but the smell, paper, ink, and disinfectant was the same. I carried my private folder under one arm, heavier now with proof photos, deed copies, and catalog notes. Every sheet hummed with quiet purpose. I didn't need anger anymore. Paper speaks louder. The banker, a woman with silver-rimmed glasses, looked up when I stepped in. Mine's Ellison. Haven't seen you in years. How are you? I'm well, I said, and I need to review my accounts, specifically access permissions. She led me to her desk, the small pen holder still shaped like an apple. When she typed my name, I caught the reflection of the screen in her glasses. Rows of numbers, tabs of data. No one, not even my son, should have authorization. I said. I'd like to confirm that. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Of course. Let's check that together. While she worked, I looked around the room, retirees filling forms, a young couple whispering over a mortgage document. I'd been all of them once, at different times. Life doesn't erase roles, it just layers them. When she finished, her tone softened. You did the right thing coming in today. Mrs. Ellison, she printed a summary and slid it across the desk. There was a pending request for third-party access, she said quietly. Your son's name is listed. It wasn't approved yet, but I met her eyes. It won't be. I signed the no third-party access form with a steady hand. Every letter neat. Enough, I said softly, to sign all the papers. The banker nodded, impressed. Not many people catch this in time. Age teaches you to read the fine print before the headline. I replied. When she stamped the form, the sound was clean and final, like a door locking. I tucked the copy into my folder. Confidence came not from winning arguments, but from holding receipts. A few blocks away, I parked outside Cross and Haynes Law. The brass sign was polished, understated, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise. Inside, Leland Cross looked older than I remembered. Eddie's friend from the firehouse poker nights. Maura, he said warmly, shaking my hand. Eddie talked about you every time he won a hand he didn't deserve. I smiled. Then he must have talked a lot. We sat down. I laid out my folder on his desk. Open to the page marked Property, Todd. I want to secure my house with a transfer on death clause. I said, but not in my son's name. A neutral trust. The proceeds can go where they belong later. He leaned back, tapping a pen against his chin. This will bypass next of kin. It's a serious step. I'm not bypassing them. I said, I'm teaching them that detours have consequences. Something in my tone must have reminded him of Eddie, because he stopped arguing. Instead, he drafted quietly, page by page. When the final document slid toward me, I read every word. Then I signed. My name looked different now, firmer, wider. The call came while I was still at his office. Mom. Kyron's voice came through tight, controlled. The bank said, you locked me out. What's going on? I adjusted permissions. I said evenly. He exhaled hard. You didn't need to do that. I just wanted to check on things. I finished for him. If you want access, you'll need your own house first. In the background, I heard Shanda mutter something sharp. Kyron tried again. You're taking this the wrong way. I ended the call mid-sentence. The click was clean, almost polite. Back home, I placed the signed bank and legal forms into my cabinet. The folder made a satisfying sound as it slid shut. The same folder they thought was empty, I whispered, just bit back. Outside, the rain had stopped. I poured tea, the steady stream catching light in the cup. Calm, quiet, certain. Through the window, the garden shimmered faintly, roses rising after rain, thorns glinting in the afternoon light. When people can't reach your bank, they start reaching for your memories instead. The envelope arrived on a Thursday, printed in polite ink and sealed with a thin line of gold. Mr. and Mrs. Voss cordially invite Maura Ellison, guest, to the engagement dinner of their daughter, Shanda and Mr. Kyron Ellison. I read the word guest twice. It sat there like a splinter, small, sharp, deliberate. I didn't crumple the paper, didn't even sigh. Sometimes politeness can cut cleaner than cruelty. That evening, I took down my old jewelry box. Inside lay the pearl pin Eddie had given me on our 10th anniversary. I pinned it to my navy dress and whispered, let's go see what our son's new family looks like. I wasn't angry, just curious. Curiosity, I've learned, is how quiet people prepare for war. The event hall sat along the riverfront. All glass doors and rented smiles. The air smelled of lilies and lemon polish. A coordinator at the entrance checked a list, glanced at my card, and handed me a badge. Head table, she said brightly. The badge read, guest, head table. I thanked her and walked in. Strings of soft lights hung above linen-draped tables. Each place setting bore a name. Bride's family. Groom. Groom's aunt. Then I found mine, Maura Ellison guest, placed beside the catering captain station. Not the family line, close enough to serve, far enough to notice. Kyron saw me across the room. He smiled, nervous, and mouthed, "We'll talk later." I smiled back, because mothers are trained to make disgrace look like grace. I smoothed the badge ribbon against my blouse and took my seat. The clinking of glasses around me sounded like coins dropped into a well. Midway through dinner, the lights dimmed. A slideshow appeared on the far wall, Family Traditions. The screen read in golden script. The first photo, Shanda as a child, holding a sparkler. The second, Kyron as a boy, sitting on someone's shoulders. I froze. The frame, the background, my heart recognized them before my mind did. That was my photo. I took it in our backyard 20 years ago. Eddie standing just outside the frame holding the garden hose. But the caption under it read, "Kieran with Mr. Voss, Family Tradition." Applause filled the room. I stared at the screen, the moment stretching thin. They hadn't stolen the picture. They'd stolen the credit for memory. After dinner, while the guests milled about, I walked toward the display table. The frame from my mantel stood there, the tiny nick on its corner unmistakable. My handwritten label, Summer 2004, Backyard, was gone, replaced by a new one in gold ink. Heritage Moments. I didn't touch it. I just looked long enough to memorize the switch. Later, Clarice Voss raised her glass. Her voice carried the assurance of someone used to being listened to new beginnings, she said, smiling toward me. Built on fresh foundations. Laughter rippled through the guests. I lifted my own glass to strong foundations, I said, my tone steady, the kind that don't require repainting every year. The laughter stuttered, then resumed, softer this time. Some weren't sure whether I'd made a joke or drawn a line. Clarice smiled tightly. "How lovely," she said. "Isn't it?" I replied, sipping my wine. I left before dessert. The music trailed behind me as I stepped into the cool night air. The river glimmered under the streetlights, calm on the surface, currents deep below. In the car, I unclipped the guest badge and set it on the passenger seat. Its reflection in the windshield looked like a small, bright lie. When I got home, I opened my cabinet and slid it into my private folder, right beside the appraisal envelope and the bank form. Every insult comes with a receipt, if you know where to file it. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, as if waiting for permission to enter. When faces start lying in public, the paper has to start telling the truth. The morning mail clinked against the metal slot like coins falling into an empty jar. I set down my coffee and pulled out a thick HOA newsletter, glossy pages, too cheerful for its own good. Halfway through, a bold header stopped me cold. Upcoming property evaluation, prospective resident review. Beneath it, my address, my parcel number, my home. You don't call someone a resident when they've lived here 34 years, I murmured, unless you plan to move them out. I folded the paper neatly, slid it beside my plate, and stared at the sunlight cutting across the table. It looked too clean, too sharp, like it was carving out the space where I sat. Curiosity came first, not anger. Curiosity keeps your voice calm when the ground under you shifts. By noon, I was standing in front of the HOA office, the scent of copier toner thick in the air. Ruth Daines, the manager, looked up from behind her screen. She smiled with the bland efficiency of someone who files lives for a living. "Mrs. Ellison, Shanda mentioned you'd appreciate modernization. Such a lovely home you have. Modernization," I repeated slowly. "Did she file a prospective buyer request?" Ruth blinked. "Well, let me check." Her fingers clacked on the keyboard. After a moment, the monitor's glow reflected in her glasses, rows of digital forms, and one line that made my throat tighten. Ellison Home, prospective review, submitted by Shanda V. Ruth smiled weakly. "Must be some misunderstanding." I nodded. "May I have a printed copy?" For clarification, while she fumbled with the printer, I raised my phone just slightly, enough to capture a quiet click, the photo of her screen, timestamp glowing at the bottom. Modernization. I thought again. is a pretty word for intrusion. I thanked Ruth, took the paper, and walked out with my spine straighter than when I came in. That afternoon, I heard a sound behind my fence, the kind that doesn't belong to birds or wind. When I stepped into the yard, a man in a blue polo was pacing with a clipboard. "Can I help you?" I asked. He turned, startled but polite. "Oh, Cameron Lock Realty. Just inspecting perimeter access for lockbox installation." "Lockbox," I repeated. "Yes, ma'am. Scheduled for next week. The file lists this property, Ellison address." He handed me his card. I studied the shiny lettering. "That would be theft," I said softly, "unless I schedule it myself." He hesitated. "I'll double check with the listing team." "You do that," I replied, pocketing the card. Inside, I set it on my desk beside my private folder. The name gleamed under the desk lamp like a dare. By evening, the house was quiet except for the hum of the scanner. I fed the HOA notice and business card through one by one, then emailed both to myself under the subject line, "Proofs, unauthorized access." I printed 2 copies, sealed one in an envelope labeled Cross and Haynes. The sound of the glue sealing shut felt like punctuation. As I finished, Odessa Bloom appeared by the fence gate, holding a basket of cut tulips. "You're not selling, are you?" she asked, half joking. "Not yet," I said. "But it seems my walls are getting offers." Her brow furrowed. "People don't know where to draw the line anymore." "Oh, I do," I said, taking the tulips, "and I keep it filed." That night, the porch light hummed softly. I sat outside, tea cooling beside me, looking at my lit windows, the ones Eddie had painted trim around himself. Ownership isn't about deeds, it's about fingerprints on light switches, the way a door knows your hand before it opens. I filed the new papers, closed the cabinet, and pressed the lock until it clicked. "Let them file their listings," I whispered. "I'm filing my case." The night air settled around me, steady and sure. When contracts stop being romantic, they start becoming educational. The phone rang mid-morning. Its sound too cheerful for a weekday. Shanda's voice came through like syrup over steel. "Maura, I thought maybe we could have lunch, just to clear up some of the weirdness lately." I hesitated. "Lunch? Nothing formal," she said. "Just a chat. Downtown, near Pioneer Square." My treat. I agreed, though not because I believed in reconciliation. Sometimes you attend a performance to understand the script. The cafe was modern, white tiles, hanging bulbs, music that didn't know when to stop repeating itself. Shanda arrived 20 minutes late, sunglasses perched on her head, nails glinting coral. She carried an oversized purse and that practiced tone of effortless apology. "I've been thinking a lot about family boundaries," she began, stirring her iced latte. "Kyron and I just want everyone to feel secure financially, emotionally, all that. We might be updating the prenup before the ceremony renewal." She smiled as if it were a compliment. I took a slow sip of tea. "Prenups are like mirrors," I said quietly. "They show who expects what." Her smile flickered but didn't vanish. "Oh, it's nothing personal. Just clarity. Clarity, I thought, is the word people use when they're polishing glass they plan to sell." When she excused herself for the restroom, her folder remained open beside her cup. I hadn't planned to look, but the pale yellow sticky note caught my eye like a flare. Beneath architectural sketches of my house was a square labeled "Our Nursery Soon." The handwriting was hers. I didn't breathe for a moment. They had already named the room before asking whose roof it still was. Without lifting the page, I slipped my phone into my palm and took one silent photo, then another, timestamp included. When Shanda returned, I smiled. "So," I asked lightly, "whose nursery?" She froze mid-step, blinked, then laughed. "Oh, that's just a design dream board thing. Dreams usually start in your own house," I said, still smiling. She changed the subject to wedding flowers, and I let her. Sometimes the silence that follows a lie is louder than proof. By mid-afternoon, I was sitting in Leland Cross's office downtown, the same warm walnut desk, the same framed photo of his golden retriever on the wall. I showed him the sticky note photo. They're not subtle anymore, I said. He studied the image, jaw tightening. And this talk about revising a prenup, was that in writing? Not yet, I said, but it will be. I'd like to get ahead of it. He nodded slowly. Then let's make their revision obsolete. We'll add clauses, protecting your property transfers and estate. Call it a respect contract. I smiled. Prenups aren't insults. Leland, they're mirrors. Let's make this one crystal clear. He began drafting the document. The tapping of his keyboard sounded like footsteps on a bridge I was building for myself. Steady, deliberate. When he finished, he leaned back. You realize this gives you absolute control over the property. That's all I ever had, I said, and all I intend to keep. At home. The afternoon light slanted across the kitchen counter. I opened the email from Cross and read line by line. One clause stopped me. All prior agreements null if coercion is proven. I traced the sentence with my finger. That line alone, I whispered, could buy me peace. I printed the document and placed it beside the HOA notice, the realty card, the bank form, each proof layered like sediment. They think I'm guarding a house. I thought, I'm guarding the definition of respect. The tea cooled beside me. Outside, wind brushed the curtains like a sigh that didn't need an apology. At dusk, I sat at my desk, reread the document, and sign my name with the same steadiness I used to write permission slips for Chiron's field trips. Then I opened a new email, attached the file, and typed, subject, finalized respect agreement, recipients, Leland Cross, Chiron Ellison, Shanda Voss. Before pressing send, I paused for one last breath. Chiron replied within minutes, Mom, this feels unnecessary. I typed back, if it were. You wouldn't feel it. Then I clicked send. The laptop screen dimmed. The house exhaled with me. When people realize they can't rewrite your contracts, they start rewriting your story instead. The golden hour slid across my kitchen table like melted honey. I polished the mahogany until I could see the ceiling fan's reflection turn slow circles. 3 places only, one for Chiron, one for Shanda, one for me, roast chicken, a simple salad, a loaf of bread I baked that morning. No candles, no centerpiece. The pearl pin on my collar caught the light just once as I passed the mirror. Inside the sideboard, my private folder waited, unseen but not forgotten. Hospitality, I reminded myself, is not surrender, it's posture. The doorbell rang 20 minutes early. Of course it did. I checked the clock just to confirm the intent written in time. Chiron and Shanda stood outside, framed by the soft glow of evening. He held a bottle of wine. She held her confidence. We thought we could help with last-minute details, she said brightly, stepping inside before I could answer. The bread knife gleamed on the counter. Shanda reached for it, her manicured hand moving as if the kitchen were already hers. The bread waits, I said, taking it from her and setting it down again. Her eyes flickered, surprise disguised as politeness. Chiron cleared his throat. We just wanted this to go smoothly. Mom, then we'll start with patience, I said. Their smiles looked rehearsed. Mine didn't. Over dinner, Shanda's tone changed, softer and staged. Let's reset, she began. No old misunderstandings, just a rehearsal for a better future. Chiron chimed in, nodding. We all want peace. Mom, peace. That word again. It sounded like a contract I hadn't signed. Peace that requires my silence, I said quietly. Isn't peace? It's a muzzle. Shanda blinked, caught off guard. I didn't mean, I know, I said. You never do. The air thickened between us. The wine bottle stayed unopened. I kept my tone soft, my breathing steady. They were performing harmony. I was memorizing motive. Later, Chiron stepped outside for a work call. Through the window, I saw his shape move against the porch light. Shanda lingered in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes on me. Only the under-cabinet light glowed, a narrow beam across the counter, stage lighting for something honest. You've gone quiet again, she said. It's not healthy to hold on so tight. I hold what's mine, I said. She smiled. Your documents won't matter forever. Time will do the work for me. I looked at her then, directly. You're 66, she continued. This house is a clock. I'm patient. The teacup in my hand trembled once before I set it down in the exact center of the saucer. I counted to 5. Clock's record who waited, I said evenly. Paper's record who acted. Her smile broke. You think this is a game? No, I said. I think you already lost. The sound of Kyron's footsteps saved her from a reply. He came back in, pocketing his phone, glancing between us. Everything okay? Perfectly, I said. We resumed the meal as if nothing sharp had passed between the dishes. When Kyron reached for the salt, I noticed the faint tremor in his hand, the kind that comes when someone knows a balance has shifted but can't name how. As they stood to leave, I added lightly, one rule for tonight's rehearsal. No talk of repainting, listing, or nurseries in my home. Shanda's smile returned. Too quick, too polished. Of course. Kyron nodded. Uncertain. We just want to make things right. I wiped the table gently, then stopped trying to rewrite them. When the door closed, I slipped my hand into my apron pocket and felt the smooth edge of the old guest badge from that dinner weeks ago. I tapped it once, a quiet metronome of memory. They rehearsed a future without me. I was rehearsing a truth they wouldn't survive. Tomorrow, the doorbell would ring again, on time this time, and the past would answer it before I did. Morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen tiles like gold dust. I folded linen napkins into clean triangles, smoothing each edge with my thumb. The ceramic plates glowed faintly beneath the overhead light. The house was quiet, but not at peace. It felt staged, like it was waiting for an audience that didn't belong here. Kyron called while I adjusted the centerpiece. Mom, they're bringing dessert, he said. Cheerful, rehearsed. People rarely bring sweetness without cost. I glanced at the clock. None. A bright, harmless hour on the outside of things. Inside, I could feel the house bracing. The doorbell rang just after 1. Shanda entered first. Crisp white dress, perfume like lilies that had stayed too long in water. Behind her came Patricia and Miles Valen, her parents. They looked like money pretending to be modest. Patricia, with pearls and soft hands. Miles, with his watch already half visible from under his sleeve. Mrs. Ellison, Patricia said warmly. We've heard so much about you. I hope it was all true, I replied, smiling thinly. Shanda beamed. Mom, Dad, this is where Kyron and I hope to start fresh. Fresh, I repeated. That's one word for it. Patricia held out a framed photograph, Shanda as a child, gap-toothed, holding a puppy. We treasure legacies, she said, and homes that keep them. Her tone made the room tilt slightly. Something in my stomach tightened. Then Miles added, casually, we were impressed with your appraisal report. This property's layout, classic bones, great resale curve. The smile on my face froze. I had never shown anyone that report. The appraisal envelope, my appraisal envelope, had been locked away for weeks, so the betrayal wasn't private. It had gone syndicated. Dessert arrived early. Glossy slices of lemon tart glimmering like apology. Miles excused himself for a quick call outside. I used the moment to refill tea. Steadying my hands, through the open window came a soft voice from across the hedge. Maura, Odessa Bloom, my neighbor, leaned slightly over her garden fence. Did you approve that open house next week? I blinked. Open house. She frowned. Yeah, flyers went around the HOA this morning. Says Tuesday. Your address? My heart didn't race. It slowed. Funny, I said. I didn't realize guests could list my home. Odessa shook her head, sympathy soft in her eyes. Neither did I. Honey? The wind shifted, carrying the faint rustle of papers from Miles's hand outside. Shanda's voice called sweetly from the dining room. Everything okay? I turned back toward the house, calm and precise, just confirming property boundaries. Dinner turned into theater. Patricia poured wine, offering compliments like receipts, such a welcoming home. I can see why Shanda feels comfortable planning ahead. Shanda smiled, glowing under her mother's approval. Kyron stared down at his plate. Miles lifted his glass. To progress, he said, and shared futures. Progress. Such a pleasant word when you don't own what's being moved forward. Before progress, I said, raising my teacup, one needs permission. For a moment, no one breathed. Patricia's hand tightened on her napkin. Shanda's smile faltered, the crack almost invisible. Then I smiled again, a hostess's smile, and the room exhaled. As dusk crept through the window blinds, conversation softened into farewells. Patricia kissed the air near my cheek. Miles extended his hand, warm, confident, unknowing. "Ma'am, this has been enlightening," he said. "I imagine it has," I replied. I reached into the sideboard and handed him a sealed envelope. "For your legal department. Since you value transparency," he looked curious but took it politely. Inside, I'd enclosed copies of the HOA notice, the appraisal letter, and Shanda's own email to the listing agent, each page dated, signed, and time-stamped. Kyron's eyes widened. "Mom, what?" "Paperwork," I said simply. "The language of your generation." Shanda's face lost its color. Patricia glanced at her daughter, then at me, realizing a conversation was ending without her permission. The silence after they left was sharp and alive. I gathered the dessert plates and stacked them gently in the sink. The tart had been too sweet anyway. "They brought dessert," I whispered to the empty room, sliding the last plate under running water. I served consequences. Outside, Odessa's porch light flickered on. The truth doesn't knock twice, it enters with paperwork. Morning sunlight spilled over the driveway, bouncing off two unfamiliar SUVs. Their chrome reflections blinked through my blinds like warning lights. By the time I stepped onto the porch, 3 strangers were already walking up the path, clipboards in hand. Smiles too bright for a Tuesday. The man in front, short-sleeved polo and polished shoes, lifted his badge. "Mrs. Ellison, I'm Cameron Locke, with the Valen listing team. The open house is set for noon." "Open house," I repeated. "How funny. I own the house, yet I don't recall setting the schedule." He looked confused. "It's on our calendar, authorized by family members." "Family," I said softly, "isn't always authorization." The words hung there long enough to make one of the women glance at her shoes. I excused myself with the kind of smile that used to calm emergency patients before bad news. Inside, my heart moved faster, not from fear but from fury that had found its footing. 5 minutes later, Kyron and Shanda pulled up in their silver sedan. Shanda stepped out first, her voice already wrapped in apology. "Mom? Oh no! This must be a mix-up. They must have misread our authorization." "Must have," I said, holding out the flyer one of the agents had given me. Across the glossy surface, in gold script, "Open House, the Valen family legacy property." I looked straight at her. Legacy for whom? Kyron swallowed hard. Shanda's mouth opened, then closed, the silence becoming her confession. Behind them, Cameron Locke looked like he wished the ground would open. "Mrs. Ellison, if this is inconvenient, it's illegal," I said. My voice was steady now, cool as the tile under my bare feet. I walked past them into the study, opened my locked cabinet, and took out the folder that had followed me through every betrayal, the one that had grown heavier with each proof I'd added. Inside was the notarized deed to this house and a new legal addendum filed by Leland Cross yesterday morning. I returned to the foyer and set the documents on the table, beside a vase of wilting roses. "You'll want to see this before anyone steps inside another inch." I dialed Cross and pressed speaker. His voice filled the entryway like calm thunder. "Mrs. Ellison, your property is under active legal hold. No transfer, no listing, no entry allowed without digital authentication from you." Cameron Locke froze mid-step. "Legal hold. Filed at county level." Cross continued. "Any attempt to market or show the property is considered trespass under Oregon statute." The realtor's face flushed pink. I wasn't aware. I imagine that's a common problem." I said. Behind me, Shanda's cheeks went pale. Kyron muttered something about misunderstanding, but even he didn't sound convinced. The power didn't come from volume. It came from paper, ink, and foresight. By early afternoon, the cul-de-sac was a gallery of watching eyes. Word had spread faster than wildfire. Show manager Ruth Danes arrived, clipboard tucked to her chest. "We received a complaint about unauthorized activity," she said. "Good," I replied. "You're witnessing the resolution." I handed her a copy of my legal notice. "Unauthorized showing. Section 4. 3. If you'd like to quote it." Neighbors lingered at their fences. Odessa's sun hat peeked over her hedge. I stood on my own porch, calm as the house behind me. Kyron's voice cracked. "Mom, we were only trying to help," I asked. "People who help don't need keys they didn't earn." He looked down. Shanda turned away, walking through the open gate with her shoulders drawn tight. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and dust. I shut the door behind them, turning the lock once. "You can't steal from someone who's been watching the locks," I murmured. By sunset, the drive was empty again. The quiet wasn't hollow this time. It was earned. I sat at my desk, filed the final notice of trespass, and forwarded across the confirmation email. Then I brewed chamomile tea, poured it into my favorite cup, and opened my journal. I wrote, "I didn't win. I endured correctly." Outside, the last light stretched across the driveway, thin, unbroken. They lost the deed before they ever tried to steal it, because they never understood what it cost me to hold it. The morning after the storm, the house felt lighter, its silence clean, not hollow. I walked the hallway slowly, fingertips grazing the wood paneling my husband once polished every winter. The air smelled faintly of dust and lavender. On my phone, an email from Leland Cross blinked open. "County recorder confirms filing complete. Unauthorized listing incident documented. Case closed." I exhaled. Steady and long. No victory dance. No smile. Just the relief of knowing the paper trail had spoken louder than I ever could. Kyron called mid-morning. No speakerphone this time. No Shanda's voice echoing behind his. "Mom," he began, "I know you don't owe me a word, but I wanted you to hear this from me. The open house, Shanda didn't do it alone. I let it happen. I wanted ease, not theft. But I let convenience borrow my spine." I waited through the silence that followed, the kind that sorts truth from apology. "Meet me tomorrow." I said, "Riverside food carts." "None. No house talk unless you can say the words 'I was wrong.'" He agreed. For once, he didn't ask where to park. By the time I reached the riverfront the next day, the sky was the color of tarnished silver. Gulls circled over the water, loud but not mocking. Kyron stood near the hot dog stand, hands shoved in pockets like a boy waiting for detention to start. "I was wrong," he said, before I even reached him. 3 words. Clean. "No, but apology accepted." I told him. "Trust is a payment plan, not a lump sum." He nodded, eyes on the water. "I can fix some things," he said. "Not all. Then start with what you broke that has your name on it." He looked up. "Can we find a way forward? One that doesn't exile Shanda but keeps her out of your business? That's the only way forward that exists." The breeze picked up, lifting the scent of fried onions and damp pavement. It didn't smell like reconciliation, just honesty, which was rarer. Thursday morning, I sat again in Leland Cross's office, signing papers that turned intent into consequence. The first, a cease and desist addressed to Shanda Voss, restricting her from using my property address in any real estate or promotional material. The second, a limited contact protocol for Kyron, emails only for logistics, no financial requests, no joint planning. Leland read each line aloud, his tone neutral. "Careful. Mercy," he said finally. "Isn't the absence of consequence? It's the shape of it." Before I left, my phone buzzed. HOA manager Ruth confirmed the new entry in association records. No property showings without verified owner authorization. The record was public now, permanent, and oddly comforting. That evening, a cream-colored envelope waited at my doorstep. Shanda's handwriting, neat, almost schoolgirl precise, inside. A short letter. She admitted to scheduling the walkthrough, said she'd been driven by fear of scarcity. of aging, of not belonging. She promised counseling, offered to sign the contract of respect addendum if ever invited to family gatherings again. I didn't respond. Instead, I copied her letter into my journal, then sealed the original in my folder labeled Cross Legal 2025. Forgiveness, I'd learned, could be quiet and administrative. Saturday morning. Sunlight rolled through the kitchen. Odessa came by with lemon cake. Ruth followed, carrying a small orchid from her garden. We sat by the open window, sipping tea, the air soft with spring. I heard they finally updated the records. Ruth said. They did, I answered. I filed a new one, too. I handed her a framed certificate. Portland Firefighters Benevolent Fund. Legacy Acceptance. My husband's badge number was engraved below. This roof sheltered my family. I told them. One day, it'll shelter strangers through the hands that helped me stand. Odessa squeezed my hand. The sunlight shifted, landing on the embroidered cloth folded neatly under the vase. Its faint stain shimmered. No longer shameful, just history that refused to vanish. By late afternoon, Kyron returned with his toolbox. Door hinge still squeaks, he asked. Every time the wind tries to leave, I said. He smiled. Kneeling to rehang the cabinet door, we worked in silence, passing screws, sharing space without stepping on it. When the hinge finally swung without sound, he straightened, wiping his hands. Maybe I'll stop by Sundays, he said. Coffee runs. My treat, here, I said, on my porch. He nodded, and that was enough. As the evening light filtered through the window, I dabbed a bit of oil on the hinge. The metal drank it in. The creak disappeared. Some bonds don't break. They're just rehung with better hardware. Looking back, I realized this story was never just about a house. It was about learning when to stand quietly and when to draw a line in ink. Every signature, every folder I sealed, it wasn't revenge. It was respect, reclaimed. In life, we can't always control what people take from us, but we can decide what we keep, our dignity, our records, and our peace. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever had to defend what you built with love, remember, strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it files a document, sets a boundary, and drinks tea afterward. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to protect something that others didn't value? What did it teach you about respect? If this video spoke to your heart, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and comment one or share where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, tell me why. Your honesty matters here. I'll see you in the next story, where the paper trails of life remind us that quiet courage never truly fades.